Do I need to repeat? Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, let me repeat. The time is now 6:10 p.m. I'd like to call our regular meeting to order. Ms. Barrios, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Stephen Pierce,
Here.
Mr. Hal Miles,
Here.
Mr. Kenneth Pritchett,
Here.
Ms. Celeste Wynn,
Mm.
Ms. Lois Long, Mr. Bernard Lundy,
Here.
Mr. Adrian Dance.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Barrios. We'll move to 1A, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Pierce, second by Mr. Miles. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move to B, Ms. Barrios, moment of silence.
We would like to remember the following during the moment of silence. Mrs. Sharon Bonner Yates and family in the passing of her husband, Mr. John R. Yates, on Sunday, November 7, 2021. The family of Mr. Stanley L. Pulley, former Petersburg City Public Schools employee who passed away on Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. The family of Ms. Mildred A. Good, who passed away on Monday, November 15, 2021. The family of Kajan Coleman, who passed away on Monday, November 15, 2021. The family of Mr. Timothy Massenberg, who passed away on Thursday, November 18, 2021. The family of Mrs. Ola May Charles, former Petersburg City Public Schools employee who passed away on Saturday, November 20th, 2021. And the family of Mr. Glenn Wyatt, retired Petersburg City Public Schools employee who passed away on Monday, November 29th, 2021.
Thank you. At this time, we have a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Next, we move to 1C, Dr. Petrie Martin.
Good evening to everyone once again, and we are very honored this evening to have with us a Petersburg High School student, Mr. Caleb Smith, and he looks very dashing here in his JROTC uniform. But we welcome Caleb Smith, and he will be reciting the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Did he tell us what grade?
I'm sorry. So before Mr. Smith gets away from us, I told him I was going to be bragging about him because he is an exceptional student here at Petersburg High School. He is a graduating senior this school year. He has a 4.16 cumulative GPA. And also, if you were present at the homecoming game this year, he was installed into the Army, and he is now eligible for a scholarship in the amount of $170,000.
Wow.
Wow.
So he is an outstanding young man, and he leads much of the JROTC work that goes on here at Petersburg High School. Just an exceptional young man.
Thank you. Yes. Outstanding. Ms. Barrios, 1D, do we have any correspondence?
Yes, sir. We have a letter from Ms. Nancy Alvarez to the school board members, and it reads, "It has been an honor and pleasure to work in the Director of Technology role for the past 7+ years. During my time, I enjoyed advancing the technology tools and processes with district leaders, teachers, staff, students, and community leaders. Thank you for all your kind words, guidance, and encouragement throughout the years. I am grateful for the professional growth during my time at Petersburg City Public Schools. Thank you again for your support and encouragement. I wish you all the best. Sincerely, Nancy Alvarez."
Wow. Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. Ms. Alvarez is on here. Ms. Alvarez, just want to say thank you. I can't remember when you came with Dr. Melvin, I believe. Yeah, you came when Dr. Melvin was here. So you've been with us for a while, and we really do appreciate all that you've done for us, the leadership role that you've taken to move our school division forward with technology. We have come a long ways with technology, and we really do appreciate your leadership. You will be missed. And hopefully I'll get to see you down in Norfolk when I travel down to NSU to those games. Hopefully you'll stop by and I'll see you down there. But thank you for everything. Anyone else? She's on, yes. Miss Long, you're on mute.
I just want to say that thank you, and we're going to miss you.
Okay. Next, we move to number 2. I believe we do not have any recognitions tonight. Okay, we move to number 3, approval of the consent agenda. That's our personnel agenda and our minutes A and B. Is there a motion to accept our consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dance. Is there a second? Ms. Nguyen,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move to number 4, superintendent and staff reports. Dr. Petrie Martin, 4A.
So good evening to all those assembled. This evening, we have a guest with us. We have attorney George Martin, and he is with us to discuss something that is new and different, I believe, here in Petersburg City Public Schools, and that is the utilization of the Public-Private Education Facilities and Infrastructure Act. This is an act that was in place here in Virginia since 2002, but it offers government authorities, agencies, the ability to use a public and private partnership in order to do work on facilities, build facilities, get technology into their organizations. And so this opportunity was discussed with us recently. It was actually late summer when we were trying to determine how could we possibly move forward on building a new school. And so on late August, Attorney Martin met with the school board during one of their advanced meetings to really begin this discussion about a public-private partnership. And then he took away the task of putting together some guidelines for the board's review. So tonight he is presenting that information, and then eventually the school board would vote on these guidelines. And then it would also be a discussion with the City Council of Petersburg as well, because they would be included in that discussion for building a new school. So at this time, I will turn it over to Attorney George Martin, who is with us virtually.
Good to be with you. Good to see everybody on the screen. Sorry, we're not in person. You have in front of you the draft guidelines that we prepared, and the public-private Education Facilities and Infrastructure Act of 2002 is commonly referred to as the PPEA. And this act was approved by the General Assembly in 2002. But back in 1995, the General Assembly approved what's known as the PPTA, which is the Public-Private Partnership Transportation Act. And that original legislation was primarily focused on transportation infrastructure. It was used with success, and the General Assembly decided that they needed to have a separate statute that was broader and that would allow public-private partnerships to be used for education facilities as well as other infrastructure. I have the honor of teaching a class at the law school at the University of Virginia on public-private partnerships, so I can say this with authority, and that is that Virginia is a leader in the area of public-private partnerships. And in fact, many states have adopted legislation based upon what we have here in Virginia. So we can take credit for being a leader in this area. Most of you are familiar with the common practice in most jurisdictions for procurement, which is design, bid, build for public projects and primarily for schools. So in that instance, the jurisdiction, the school division would hire an architect to design a school. They would accept that design, and then they would put that out for bid. And contractors would submit bids, and the contractor with the lowest bid would be awarded the contract to build the school. The PPEA gives the school division more flexibility, if you will, in the process of designing and building and financing schools. And that the last part is very important because obviously through this process, you can use what we would call non-traditional methods to finance public-private partnerships. But it also gives a fair amount of flexibility in terms of how you enter into an agreement with the developer or contractor that's going to be responsible for building the school. And that agreement is called a comprehensive agreement. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Let me first walk you through just some of the key features of the guidelines that you have in front of you. There are basically two ways that you can go about procuring a developer or contractor under this process. And you have the solicited process or solicited proposals, and then unsolicited proposals. The definition of qualifying project is very broad. You can tell by the title that it obviously includes schools, but it actually includes a lot more than just schools. Infrastructure projects, technology infrastructure, technology efficiency projects. There are all kinds of projects that can be undertaken with this legislation. And in fact, some transportation projects have been done even though there's a separate PPTA. Since 2002 in Virginia, there have been 150 projects that have been developed using this format. And as I said, it gives localities and school divisions a lot more flexibility in terms of structuring a deal because they have the opportunity to negotiate. And the term negotiate is very, very important. Prior to this, most projects were done on a low bid basis and you did not have the ability to negotiate. So under the guidelines, as I mentioned, there are two methods. One is the solicited proposal. So by solicited proposal, basically it's a two-step process, similar to what you would have for competitive negotiation. And at the first level, you have basically a submission of qualifications. And then if you determine to go forward with a party or parties, you would move to an RFP where they would actually submit their conceptual plan for the project. For the unsolicited process, a developer can send you a proposal that they would develop. And if you decide to accept that proposal, you have to post it. And then you give competitors the opportunity to submit proposals, competing proposals, and it's a 45-day period. This is a really, really good feature because obviously, as you know, there's a lot of effort that goes into developing an RFP. One of the other things that is interesting about the PPEA is you can actually advertise, if you will, that you are interested in receiving unsolicited proposals. But here again, there's a lot less required in terms of effort on the part of the school division to put that word out on the street as opposed to preparing a full RFP. So under the unsolicited proposal process, if you accept the proposal that's submitted, you would have the ability to then negotiate with that party and then move to what's called the detail phase of the process. But one of the nice features under the PPEA is if you get additional proposals, once you advertise during that 45-day period, you can actually continue to negotiate with those parties as well. And so in effect, you have the opportunity to play them off of each other and negotiate what is the best deal for the school division. Another nice feature of the act is when they file the unsolicited proposal, they have to pay you a fee to cover some of your costs to review it. And if you decide to go to the detail phase, they have to pay you an additional fee. And that fee is 2.5% of the project cost up to $50,000. And so if you're negotiating with 4 firms, for example, you can collect that fee from all 4 firms. If you're negotiating with 2, you can collect it from 2. And if it's 1, just 1. I will note, though, that it is not required, but it's a pretty common practice that if you don't proceed with, so let's say you get 4 proposals, but you don't proceed with all of them, the proposals that you reject, it is common practice to return that or some part of it. It's not required, but that's a common practice. So you're also required under the statute to give notice to the affected jurisdiction. So in this case, that would be the city of Petersburg itself. You would have to give them notice. And also, in addition to that notice, before you enter into a development agreement, and under the statute it's called a comprehensive agreement, but it's really a development agreement, you have to post the proposal for 30 days before you take action on that agreement. And there are 2 types of agreements that can be entered into under the PPEA. One is called the interim agreement. The other is called the comprehensive agreement. The interim agreement is really nothing more than an interim comprehensive agreement. And often what the parties will do is they'll negotiate an interim agreement while the developer is going through its due diligence, fine-tuning cost, and it generally provides for transfer of the intellectual property associated with the design to the school division in the event that the parties don't go forward with a comprehensive agreement. But it also generally provides that the school division will reimburse the developer for some part of their soft costs, the development cost, pre-development costs rather, if the parties don't go forward. I mentioned the fact that one of the things that's a nice feature about the PPEA is the ability to have consideration for different financing methods. So for example, you could have equity investment, you could have tax credits, you could have incentives, you can have tax exempt debt, you can have traditional debt, you can have taxable bonds. There are all kinds of things that you can add into financing the capital stack, if you will, for the financing. And just to be clear, it is important to note that at the conceptual phase level, there are certain things that are required in the statute and in the guidelines. And as well, when you move specifically required, but you're not limited in what you can request. So you can expand that to require additional information. But among other things, at the conceptual stage, you obviously want information regarding the developer's experience, and especially with similar projects. You want some information about their financial wherewithal, anticipated support for the project, as well as anticipated opposition to the project. They will give you at a high level their description of the project and its characteristics. They'll describe the legal structure. So for example, if they want to put together an LLC or some sort of special purpose entity, they'll set forth that at this level. I mentioned the fact that they'll describe the debt, but they'll also describe, what is necessary to deliver the project. For example, if they need site control, they'll speak to that. If they need anything from the city, they'll speak to that. And then when we move to the detail phase, it's the same kind of information, but you're going to go to a different level. So they're going to refine their financing plan. They're going to refine their design. They're going to give you more concrete information in terms of site control, any issues with the site. For example, if they have a concern about environmental issues, things along those lines. And the evaluation process is very similar to what you would use if you were doing competitive negotiation. So you would look at, here again, the team that's being offered, their financial proposal, their experience, and all of those things will be evaluated during the evaluation process. One other note, if, for example, they decide to set up a special purpose entity, such as a limited liability company, it is generally recommended that you ask for a guarantee from the parent of that entity. The PPEA is a good tool for project delivery for a lot of projects, and obviously it can be used for public schools. So obviously, since there are some advantages, there are also some disadvantages. And one of the things that you have to consider, it doesn't fit every project. And in fairness, some projects are too small so that from a financial standpoint, it doesn't work for the developer, because obviously to deliver on this, the developer is going to have to make a substantial contribution of effort, time, and money on the front end. And in fairness, it is more work than what you would typically see for a design, bid, build project. Often you will find contractors that aren't really developers that want to enter this space. And if they've never worked on a project using the PPEA, the learning curve can be fairly steep. The other drawback is the process obviously is a lot longer than the process for design, bid, build in a sense, but in fairness, if you factor in the time that it takes the architect to complete the design before you can put the project on the street, it's probably about the same. And the other con is that in terms of the overall delivery of the project, the developer has a lot more control, a lot more say. And that's something that folks sometimes have trouble with. But let's look at the positive. The positive is that in terms of actually delivering the project, it saves time. And from the school division standpoint, your costs are actually lower because you're not paying for the design on the front end. And typically the contract that you enter into in this arrangement is a guaranteed maximum price contract as opposed to a low bid. You have a single point of contact. So for example, if you have a design problem, in the traditional scenario, design, bid, build, if you've got a design issue as between the contractor, that's your problem. You have to pursue that claim against the architect. In this scenario, if you have a design problem, it's the developer's issue. If you have a construction problem, it's the developer's issue. So you have a single point of contact, and that's very advantageous. It also is a process whereby you can consider different approaches. So in other words, you can look at different designs, you can look at different financing models at the same time and compare them and come up with the best approach for your particular project. So it gives you a lot more flexibility. And the other beauty is that you can negotiate. So for example, if something is not in the proposal that's submitted by the developer, but you decide that it's something that they should consider, you have the ability to add that to the conversation. So it gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of negotiation. It also opens up the door for potential for some private investment as well as layering the financing. And we could talk about that in a little more detail. So that is generally what the PPEA process looks like. As I said, it has been very successful in Virginia, 150 projects. That's a very large number when you think about the number of public projects that are done throughout the state. And it has been used by school divisions to build schools. It has been used to build jails. It's been used to build city hall. It's been used to do all kinds of public projects. So with that, I'll stop. And if there are any questions, I'll entertain those.
Thank you, Attorney Martin. Any questions from board members as of yet? Ms. Nguyen?
Good evening, Attorney Martin. How are you doing this evening?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Excuse me, I have a lot of notes in front of me that I have collected since I've been here, but I'm looking at some of my notes from the last time we met. You mentioned, I believe, a RFQ process.
I'm sorry.
You mentioned an RFQ process. Is
Yeah,
that part?
two
Is that part of?
phase. Yes, a two-phase procurement. So you basically have, if you're going to do a solicitor proposal, the first procurement document is basically to get the qualifications, and then the second would be the RFP.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just wanted some clarification.
Sure.
That's it. Anything else? You good? Okay. That's it for the questions. Is he frozen? Attorney Martin?
Yes.
Yes, that's it for the questions.
Okay. Well,
That's in this presentation.
yeah. So you,
Okay.
I guess the next step is, if you are so inclined, you need to adopt the guidelines before you can proceed with a project under the PPEA. Just adopting the guidelines doesn't mean that you have to use it, but you have to have guidelines in place before you consider a PPEA proposal. So I would candidly recommend that you, and you don't have to do it today, it's up to you, but I would recommend that you go ahead and at least adopt them, and that gives you the flexibility if you want to use it. But here again, just because you adopt it, you're not obligated to use the PPEA.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Question also now, we are meeting, of course, you know, we're meeting Monday with City Council, and you'll be sharing, I guess you'll be sharing the same information. Now, will City Council also have to adopt the document, also adjust the school board?
just a school board, but you have to get their sign off, if you will, before you adopt the comprehensive.
Say it again. You
You
went
would
out.
have to, you would have to, whatever proposal you get, you have to share it with the city because they are an affected jurisdiction. But then you
Okay.
also have to get their sign off before you sign the comprehensive agreement.
Okay. Okay.
And then, like, in fairness, depending upon how it's financed, you know, you're gonna need more than just their sign off.
Right. Okay. We appreciate it. I believe that's it, that there are no other questions. So we will see you on Monday.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Hope you have a good evening. And if you have any follow-up questions, I'll be happy to as well.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, Dr. Petrie Martin, we'll move to 4B.
Okay. So at this time, we always have policies that we will be bringing really starting now for the next several months, but we will have policies for first review. Some of the policies that you see here are things that have been discussed in the past, and we might have made some adjustments to them. And then there are some brand new policies on here as well. So at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. Good evening, Chair Pritchett, Vice Chair Pierce, members of the board, all of those who are assembled. There are 5 policies for first review this evening, beginning with item number 1, JFCAB-R. These are new guidelines. The guidelines are for student use of cellular phones and other portable communication devices. It's a new regulation to provide guidelines governing student use of cell phones and other portable communication devices as it relates to being in school activities or on school grounds. This regulation was written to accompany the policy that the board has already reviewed and is on the action item agenda. The guidelines were designed to provide some additional detail, specifically spelling out prohibited conduct. It is not an exhaustive list, but includes some very key things that students need to be aware of. Unauthorized use of cell phones during the instructional day. Using a cell phone or other device during any testing situation. Using a cell phone or other device for unlawful activity while on school property, while attending any school function or activity. Recording either audio, video, or both, violations of school board policies, including but not limited to fighting. And refusing a direct order to relinquish the cell phone or other device as required during testing or as a consequence for violating school board policies. The guidelines also specify that violation of school board policies, local, state, and/or federal laws will result in appropriate disciplinary action as specified in the Code of Student Conduct and/or legal action. The first bullet says unauthorized use of cell phones. So there may be times when school personnel has authorized the use of the cell phone, perhaps during lunch at the high school. That may be an option for students. That would be authorized use. Unauthorized use may be at any other time where the school administrator or instructor has not authorized the use of a cell phone. So those are the guidelines that were designed to accompany the policy on the use of cell phones and other personal portable communication devices. The second policy, alternative to short-term suspension education program, is the policy that outlines the procedure for assignment to alternative education program for students recommended for short-term out-of-school suspension. Currently is identified as now 3.0. You will not see reference to the name of the program in the policy in the event that the name is changed or the program is modified. The policy speaks to the procedure for placements due to short-term suspension, and it specifies, with the assistance of our school board attorney, that if a parent of a student who is facing a short-term suspension so chooses, the student will be referred to the alternative, the short-term suspension education program in lieu of a short-term out-of-school suspension. So the parent has to opt for this opportunity. Additionally, it includes a procedure for the transition back to the student's home school. And that policy follows the details of the program as presented to the board at previous meetings. The additional policies that you will see below the shaded area are policies that are nearing the 5-year review period. And just as a reminder, the standards of quality, standard 7, requires that all school board policies be reviewed at least once every 5 years and revised as needed. You will see EBBA, emergency first aid, CPR, and AED certified personnel. This policy was last revised on January 4th, 2017. The policies here that are presented for first review that are nearing the 5-year review period are policies that have been provided by the attorney for the Virginia School Boards Association. Our policies are in compliance with the policies that VSBA has provided, and no revisions are being recommended to these 3 policies. Item number 4, FECBA, energy efficient construction. No revisions recommended. And item number 5, FECBB, accommodations for the disabled. Again, these policies are nearing the 5-year review period. They are consistent with the policies currently in the VSBA policy manual issued on May 2021, and no revisions are being recommended for these particular policies. And that concludes the policies for first review.
Any questions? Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Any questions from board members?
Yes.
Mr. Lundy?
Dr. Johnson,
Yes, sir.
in our alternatives, short-term suspension, do we have any, and I don't know if yourself, Dr. Petrie Martin, Ms. Bell, do we have any numbers, seating numbers for instruction? We say we have instruction, 2-hour instruction in the suspension, in the short-term suspension, right?
I can take that. So we did propose a draft schedule for the day where I think we had a 2-hour in the morning and maybe a 2-hour in the afternoon. I'd have to go back and look at it, where the students would be able to do their assignments within Schoology, but that was a draft that we presented.
I was trying to see, are we in compliance with the seating instruction time?
And so that's why I said it was a draft, because we also want to look at everything else happening during that day to make sure we're complying with about that 5 to 5.5 hours. So
we're going to get back with that.
yeah, we absolutely are. We're in the works of fine tuning. Once you all told us that we can at least move forward with the planning, we're right now in the planning stages. And we said we bring this back to you in January.
Because I was just concerned about it, because I think we might need to look at that closely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, I did. Any other? I only had one. On the very last, let me go back to it. On the second page, Ms. Bell, the second page, number the last bullet. Student will be released. Can we put the word transition there and remove release? I see release as another prison or jail term.
Yes, sir. We certainly can.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Lundy?
Yeah, I'm not being picky, but I want to know something about this short-term suspension, because there are some things we're going to have in there for everyone to understand. The one problem I'm having a difficult time understanding is that if Johnny is in a short-term situation, and say in this building here, and the south wing was over here, was unoccupied. Just for instance, it was unoccupied. Wouldn't it be, for that short term, wouldn't it be better for Johnny to transition within his setting? Especially, okay, I'm sorry.
And I know that was a question we discussed in the previous presentation as well. And that is what we consider in-school suspension, which we do have currently here and at Vernon Johns. The only thing I know we had stated is that the programming that we had outlined would not necessarily be in-school suspension. So it was really about the programming difference between that in-school suspension and an out-of-school suspension program. But we do have in-school suspension where the student can spend time in-house. Am I answering your question, Mr. Lundy? Or are you saying why not just have the same program that you would have there in both here in Vernon Johns? Is that
well, I was looking at 2 or 3 different things. One was
okay.
How our building, what situation our building may be in.
Well, that's true.
That's very important.
That's true.
And so that's why I'm not knocking the program. Please understand that.
Okay.
But I'm trying to understand, if you're in the setting for such a short time, why do we transition that child out of that building when he or she could be within the same educational setting and just move swiftly right over?
And I think, Mr. Lundy, if that is going to be the case, we probably need to have a broader discussion about the offenses and then whatever the consequences are. Because typically, if you are out of school suspended, that offense is at a much higher level than, let's say, something that would be an in-school suspension. So currently, out of school suspensions are happening, in schools across the country, but it's always for a greater offense.
That's what I thought.
So part of this is also about acknowledging that the student offense might be such that they have to be removed from the campus because it is a serious offense, but not necessarily just putting them out there on the street, giving them another option. So if that's the case, we might want to have a different conversation than the one we had before, but that was the intent, Mr. Lundy. It was because that level of offense is very different, and that would have put them in an out-of-school suspension that wouldn't have given them the chance to stay in the building. And again, I hope I'm answering that question correctly.
No, because if I was a parent, I'd raise the devil as I look at it, because it has to have a great explanation to see that difference in here.
Yes,
And I just want us to be careful about this thing. That's all.
And we have a long way to go, Mr. Lundy, because we have to finalize the policy. We have to finalize a lot of the marketing material. That's why we told you all give us some time to get everything in place once you said you can start the planning process. So we absolutely agree with you. we need that time to get all that situated.
Okay, I do have another question. At the last meeting, I asked a question about the students being separated, students who have altercation, and I think you said there would be four classes, so they would be separated. But when I look at the bullet, this other bullet, how are we going to keep them separated if we're transporting students from their home school in the morning to the alternative school? How are we separating kids on the bus who've had altercations?
And in that case, what we will do, Chair Pritchett, each time a situation occurs, it's very important how the administrators communicate information to the parents. So in many of the information, one of the key priorities, we always ask parents as a first option to please transport. In cases where, and that's one of the reasons, to make sure that they are separate. On the second instance, if that is the case, the administrators need to always check the temperature of students who may be on the same bus. We do, and we have already worked with Ms. Gwen Hogan, who oversees our school resource officers and our security staff. And so on those buses, there will be a security person that actually gets on the bus at Vernon Johns, as well as one from the high school. And she has a schedule that she's setting up for us as well. So we'll be very careful in those situations. And if we have to make a double run in a situation, that's why staffing is so important and how this always works.
Okay. I like the program also. It's just, I have concerns also. Were the principals, and I'm going to ask this question because I can't remember everyone that was on the committee. Were the principals aware that you plan to take security or whatever officers out of the building and put them on the bus to go over to the alternative school when they're already hollering that they don't have enough people in the building already?
And they might not be aware of that particular piece. We've talked, well, Ms. Green is where we've talked with her, and Ms. Fields has been very open. That transportation is only a route over there and return. So it's probably a 15 to 20 minute time period. And with Ms. Hogan, she has expressed that that will be fine and how she's scheduling them to make sure they're coming and going. And the principals are in full support of all the pieces we've talked about thus far.
Okay, something, and I don't know. I mean, something's not right.
I tell you.
What I will say about starting any new program, we know that we're going to have to start the program in almost what I call a pilot mode, meaning that we have to get the program up and running with those precautions, because I think that's what you're asking for. You're asking for setting up some precautions and kind of some layered supports so that we don't have altercations between students. So I hear you absolutely loud and clear. So what we're going to have to do is, as we start this process, we know that parents have the option to do this. We're going to have to work very, very closely to monitor every single student case that comes before us to ensure that every single piece that you just described is in place. So when we start this program, we don't see it as being incredibly large numbers. It could be, but we also need to do what we need to do at the schoolhouse, meaning the traditional schools, to ensure our out-of-school suspensions are decreasing. So we're not talking about that right now, but that is really important too. Our goal is not to have hundreds of kids go into this program, right? Yet our goal is to actually have the out-of-school suspensions being decreased here as well. So I just thought I'd say that, because I don't want to ever send a message that we're like going to just have tons and tons of students in this program, because we really want to get the out-of-school suspensions down in our traditional schools. So we're going to have to monitor this very, very closely, Chair. But that is the goal. The goal is not to have a ton of students going there. And I hope, you know, I'm making myself very clear. That is really the goal.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think you're going to have a problem with
the same two people having an altercation over and over again, because we didn't experience that in the past. And I did security for like 7 years. Even when they were back in school the next day, we didn't have that problem, that type of problem. So I understand the concern that you put them back together, but all the kids that have altercations, they come back to school, they come back together with a better understanding. So we're looking forward to doing it that way, especially with the counseling that we provide and with the intervention that we're providing. And hopefully we won't have that, but we haven't had it in the past where we had kids, when they come back together, they do the same thing all over again, and they still carrying on the same beef. So I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. If it is, it'll be unique. It's not going to be a standard. So.
And personally, again, I'm only speaking on behalf of actually being in this capacity myself as a high school principal and having to have this conversation, that when our students had these infractions, it was up to us as an admin team, that when we had those conversations, we knew if it was John and Joe having a situation, when we spoke to John and Joe's parents, we knew who was riding the bus and who was being transported. And if those details weren't worked out, then they didn't go. But it's a very rare case that it wasn't. Right. But I would have to say that is the same. Every now and then you may have a kid who is returning back to a school, even if they were fine at the program, because kids are going to be kids and there's nothing we can do a whole lot about that sometimes. We want to try to redirect those behaviors. But overall, the logistics of admin and their willingness to make sure that it works, I think they're
on out.
I'm sorry, I'm muted for a moment, my apologies. Yeah, and I was just saying the kids will be kids. However, our goal is always to try to make sure, and the goal again is through mediation. And there are times when kids do have a situation, but you're right, even without this program, they return right back to the building. And how many of the repetitive situations do we have? And they are very, very few. And a lot of times because those conversations are held with them and their parents prior to them even leaving the building to even go home. So there's a combination.
Anyone else? Miss Long, are you saying something? Go ahead.
I know we're working on fixing this specific issue, but I think that sometimes when you come into the school and you set the tone, it's like we really have to be the ones to set the tone. I think our children are acting like some of our staff. Some of our staff have an attitude, a high energy, and when that person is your bus driver or when you first walk into the door, that's the energy, and then that's the energy for the rest of the day. It's like giving somebody a bad day. The first person you speak to, instead of them saying, hi, have a good day, they come at you and barking at you. So it kind of ruins your day for the rest of the day. And then that person's in that fight or flight mode. These kids are in the fight and flight mode, but that's just a comment. I didn't have a question. It's nobody's fault. Yeah.
Any other questions? Mr. Lundy?
I say I do have a lot of questions about it because I'm getting confused with, and we can take it up later. I'm getting confused with, I thought it was a soft program, and which it is. And I'm just trying to see how we can swing this thing, just like when we start talking about the bus. But then it takes you almost to another setting of the bus with the bars around it. I mean, it's like, why are we busing them now? We're going to bus them to them. Then we're going to put somebody on the bus, a guard with them, a security person on the bus with them, And I guess I'm looking at the building itself, even the building we were considering. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering why we are not able to transition within your own building. If it's a soft program. That's what I'm saying. That's something we can talk about later. That's fine. I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lundy. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ms. Bell.
You're welcome.
Dr. Petrie Martin, we'll move. Oh, thank you also, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Petrie Martin, we'll move to C.
The next item that we have under reports is a MOU for a learning garden for Pleasance Lane Elementary School. As you all know, through the years, you have approved the Petersburg Healthy Options proposal, which has been a grant between Petersburg City Public Schools and the City of Petersburg to facilitate some farm-to-table wellness and nutrition programs for students in our school division. Pleasance Lane had the opportunity of using a learning garden that was on a property that was near the school, but did not belong to the school or to the city. That particular learning garden is no longer available because that private citizen will be selling that property. But through PHOPS and the school division, we would like to continue the learning garden format. As a matter of fact, we have aligned many of the activities at the learning garden with our STEM and our science curriculum, so that when our students reach certain SOL standards, they actually go out and get hands-on experiences in the learning garden. So we have gone to the city and we had asked about the property that is near Pleasance Lane. And it is the property that is right next to where the playground equipment is. And then they have the covering where I think it's a picnic area. That area belongs to the City of Petersburg, but we have asked them if it can be used for the learning garden. They have said yes, but they have asked us to enter into a MOU with them to be able to move forward with having the learning garden on that property. So what you see before you on the screen, and also you have seen it here, this is the MOU that has been put together, and the MOU will be between the City of Petersburg and Petersburg Public Schools as part of that PHOPS, the Healthy Options Partnership work to have that learning garden be on that property there near Pleasance Lane Elementary School. And of course, this is just for first review, Chair, and we'll bring it back for approval December 15th.
Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. Any questions from board members?
Yes.
Mr. Lundy.
Question, being that this is on the property that it's on, the city property, will that be fenced in any kind of way? And the reason I'm asking this is because that setting is also a night fun setting. And if we're going to have children there with a garden and people are there, you don't know what's taking place with those whatever they're trying to grow. We don't know what people are doing under there. So I'm wondering, is it in a way we can pull this thing close or secluded or some kind of way, because many things happen.
And Mr. Lundy, on page 2 of the MOU, they are agreeing to putting up some fencing using the grant funds. I'm not sure how significant the fencing will be, but it does look like they're willing to at least protect the learning garden portion for exactly the reason you just shared.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I only have one for Dr. Petrie.
Only have one.
Go ahead, Mr. Pierce.
Yeah, I saw that also, Dr. Petrie Martin, when we were talking about the terms, not just what Mr. London was mentioning about the fencing, but they talked about the greenhouse type of effect. That's what I'm thinking. And in my mind's eye, I was thinking it was a greenhouse enclosure. So my curiosity is, if that is the case, if it's a greenhouse enclosure, is it going to be not only fenced in, but closed in? and for whatever reason, protected.
It's-
Who's going to who actually oversees this again?
So Fancy Terrell is the program manager
Mhm,
for this particular grant
mhm.
and P-HOPS. So she is the one who manages the funds and would work, and she works for the city, who would work in partnership with us to get this done. So I actually think it's both. It's the greenhouse and the fencing in of the actual garden in the ground. I think it's both.
Okay, I see what they're talking about, lock sheds and things of this nature, but I was just curious if not only is it fenced in, but if it is a greenhouse environment, is that environment protected some kind of way? So even during the off hours,
Right.
is it protected in a way so that when you come back the next day and they're viewing it, we don't have, a lot of, incidents going on when it's out of sight, after dark, after hours, that kind of thing. So that would be my only concern is how they would monitor that. I'm sure they'll be monitoring it every day, but some level of protection for it. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mhm. Dr. Petrie Martin, my question is, do you know if they have any plans in the works for our other 3 elementary schools?
Yes, sir, they do. They have things in the works for Lakemont Elementary School. It may not be exactly this version, but they are looking at some property that is kind of within the property. This was the only one though where we were asking to use somebody else's property.
Right.
So
Okay. So they're gonna work on another grant, I guess other grants for the other 3 schools.
actually for, I think Lakemont, it is already included within the grant that they currently have.
Okay. So we don't know about the other 2.
Walnut Hill, I know they have not started work with them as far as a garden as of yet. And then I would have to go back and make sure I'm very, very clear on where they are with Cool Springs. But I know Lakemont and this one were kind of the 2 out the gate. And we went in this direction first because we literally needed some property to get this one done.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Long?
I see that the price would be different because on one you having to acquire property, the other one is given. How much are we spending on the one at Stewart Stewart School?
You're right.
What's the new name?
Same.
Pleasant Lane.
Pleasant Lane. My
Yeah,
bad.
I'm saying
yeah.
Lakemont.
And we actually don't spend anything at all. This is
Okay.
all grant funded through the P-HOPS grants. I would have to ask them exactly how much they're gonna spend. Because
Okay, I see.
we don't spend anything.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? You had another question? Go ahead.
Yeah. So who's the director? Who's teaching
Fancy Terrell is the project lead for the entire project. And within that project, there are additional workers who take on a lot of these tasks, but she is the one who oversees the whole project.
Okay. Okay. So she's overseeing the project. Who's teaching?
So what happens is that whenever the kids go out to the learning garden, of course, the teachers go with them. We also very often will have Dr. Jackson, the STEM coordinator, who is out there with them. But as part of their P-HOPS grant, they have teachers, for lack of a better word, who also will come out and they get their hands in the dirt with the kids as well.
Okay.
And that's part of their grant, though. We don't fund those people.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. I believe now we'll move to our public comments. Ms. Barrios.
In accordance with BDDH, public participation at school board meetings, the public will have an opportunity for public comment. Citizens are invited to address the school board on matters of public concern about the school division. Speaker forms are available prior to the start of the meeting. If you wish to address the school board, please complete the form and give it to the clerk of the board. Each individual will have 3 minutes to speak. Speakers may not yield their time to another. All comments shall be directed to the board chair. Speakers should address the board chair with decorum on policy issues. Speakers comment on individuals at their own risk of violating confidentiality laws and/or defaming the subjects of their comments. Neither the board chair, superintendent, nor the school administration will respond publicly to any comments by speakers about individuals. The audience is asked to be respectful of all speakers. Public comment is the school board's opportunity to listen to the speaker. Since their purpose is to hear from you, the board will not engage in dialogue with the audience or whomever is at the podium. Matters requiring a response will be directed to the superintendent for research and response. The superintendent may report back on such matters at a subsequent business meeting as appropriate. The school board carefully considers your comments as they decide matters that are brought before them. They appreciate your attendance and your input. Anyone wishing to speak at the regular school board meeting may complete an online public comment form available on the school board page of the Petersburg City Public Schools website at www.petersburg.k12.va.us or contact the school board clerk at 804-518-6459 or email me at jeberrios@petersburg.k12.va.us, and your name will be placed on the list to speak during the public comment period. And Mr. Chair, no online comments had been received. No, sir, no online comments had been received and no sign up at the meeting this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Barrios.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
at this time, we'll move to public comment period. The first individual is Francis. Is that Francis? Fancy Terrell. I'm sorry. I need my reading glasses. Fancy Terrell. She's with P-Hop, Ms. Barrios.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. How are you?
Just fine.
Good. I just raised my hand because I know we were discussing the Learning Garden earlier, and I just wanted to know if there were any questions that I could possibly answer.
Ms. Long.
Oh, no. I just want to say thank you. Hey.
Thank
That's my
you.
friend. I was just asking because I was curious of how far, we have teachers and seeing what the children was doing, but I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for the work that you're doing. I'm really appreciative to the whole PHOPS team, especially our in-classroom facilitators that are working hands-on with the students, and also, of course, Dr. Petrie Martin and Dr. Jackson. It's been a really great experience so far.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
have one question.
Mr. Miles.
Can you give me an example of some of the things that you're planning on growing in this in your garden?
Of course. So the first thing that we're considering with everything that we're anticipating growing will be STEM and STEAM related. So we're trying to make sure that everything is strategic. We're also considering things that have sensory capabilities as well for students that may be dealing with other mental or emotional issues. So making sure that there are things that are really good for sight and for scent, such as lavender that can be grown. We're also considering growing blueberries. We also have provided a greenhouse where we can grow things even when the weather is not so kind to the elements. We'll also be making sure that students have the ability to dissect seeds and be able to see how the inner workings of that happen. But overall, we really want to make sure that we are creating a well-rounded program that speaks to all of the intersections in ways that our students need to be supported. So not only the healthy food, but what does it mean to have a healthy lifestyle? What does it mean to have access to these foods? And also, what does it mean to have the power to be able to grow them? So we're really trying to make sure that our program is well balanced.
Thank you.
Okay, and the question that I posed to Dr. Petrie Martin, are you familiar or do you have information on when you will possibly move into the other 3 elementary schools?
We really want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to execute that first location best at Pleasance Lane, and we're working through making sure that we're well equipped before we start into another one. So before I commit to any dates with that, we really want to make sure that we work out the kinks and we're able to execute at Pleasance Lane.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I'm sorry to not be able to give you a more direct answer at this time, but as soon as we know, I will be sure to update everyone.
Yeah.
Sure.
Dr. Petrie Martin.
And Ms. Terrell, as you can see, we're all anxious to have learning gardens at all of our elementary schools so that our kids can really get the experience that you described. So we'll be working with you to see how we can get there, but just know we have a sense of urgency there to move forward. And the other thing, I always want to acknowledge Petersburg High School graduates. Ms. Terrell is a graduate of Petersburg High School, and it's so exciting to see people coming back to our school system from the community to provide support to our young people. So I had to throw that in as well, Ms. Terrell.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be from Petersburg.
Amen. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight? Okay, if not, we're going to end our public comment period and move on to our action item. Dr. Petrie Martin, we'll move to 6A.
Yes, sir. We are beginning with the policies for action, and these were actually items that were brought to the board during our last school board meeting. So Dr. Johnson will give us a quick overview and tell us if we have any feedback that has come forward from stakeholders on these policies.
Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. Good evening again. These policies were first presented to the board on November 3rd for first review. The first item on the chart, JFCAB, is a new Petersburg City Public Schools policy, student use of cellular phones and other portable communication devices. The new policy was recommended to clarify division expectations regarding student possession and use of cellular phones and other portable communication devices while on school grounds. The policy has been out for review and no additional comments or feedback has been received and no edits have been made to the policy that was first presented for first review on November 3rd. The second item, JHCFA, is a new Petersburg City Public Schools policy, student lunches. The new policy was recommended to clarify that students may bring lunch from home, but it also prohibits outside food from being delivered to schools during school hours without written permission from the principal. This policy did receive some feedback from division leaders and school administrators. Revisions or edits were made in paragraph 2. Under paragraph 2, it indicates that all lunches from home must be provided in a lunchbox and or other packaging such as a brown bag. It was recommended that the word brown be deleted. Brown lunch bags are available for sale and it gave the impression that the expectation was that if students did not have lunch boxes, that parents would be expected to purchase these specific bags for lunches. So the word brown was stricken, and it just says that lunch in a lunchbox or other packaging such as a bag. The other edit was that while kitchen staff cannot heat meals for students, rather than saying no microwaves are available for student use, the edit from division and school leaders was that unauthorized student use of microwaves is prohibited because in some schools, the microwave is visible, but it's not available for use by students. So it was edited to say unauthorized use of microwaves is prohibited. The rest of the policy remains as was presented on November 3rd. These are the only two policies for action this evening.
It is our recommendation that we move forward on policy JFCAB and policy JHCFA as they have been presented.
So move.
Second.
Aye.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, is your mic on? I can't hear you at all.
I'm sorry. Ms. Long, you were supposed to let me know. I'm sorry. It was moved by Mr. Dan, second by Mr. Miles. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm sorry. Next, Dr. Petrie Martin, we'll move to 6B.
The next item that we had also brought to you at our meeting in November was the Connexus and Petersburg City Public Schools MOU. As we know, we have worked with Connexus, which is an eye screening program before. They would like to work with us again. And it is also critical to know that we feel this is even more important this year because many students missed eye screenings and eye care during that COVID period where we spent quite a bit of time at home and virtual. So we are moving forward or asking that we can move forward on this MOU to again partner with Connexus.
Thank you. You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Oh, well, any questions?
No.
You gave.
So it is our recommendation that we move forward with the approval of the Petersburg City Public Schools and Connexus MOU for screening and mobile vision clinic services.
Thank you. You heard the superintendent's recommendation. Is there a motion to accept?
So move.
Second.
Who was that?
Lois.
Ms. Long and Mr. Pierce. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Dr. Petrie Martin, 6C.
6C is another MOU. This is the MOU with District 19 and again, Petersburg City Public Schools. You all had approved a MOU with District 19 previously. This one was not included in that packet. This is specifically for what is called the Another Chance program. This MOU, if it were approved, would allow our students to participate in any drug intervention programs through District 19. And this is a partnership that we have had for several years. So again, this was reviewed with you all on November 3rd, and we're bringing it back for more discussion or approval.
Thank you. Any questions? Your recommendation?
It is my recommendation that we move forward with the District 19 Community Service Board MOA with Petersburg City Public Schools for the Another Chance program.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation?
So move.
Moved by Ms. Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Miles, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6D.
Next item is also a MOU. This document was also reviewed with the school board during the November 3rd meeting. This is a relatively new MOU for the school division because we have reached a point where we have residents who are now working in Petersburg City Public Schools as teachers. So we are being asked to participate in a study of teacher residency programs and their graduates. This is a lengthy MOU with Mathematica, which is a research entity, but it would give them good data, but it would also give us good data regarding the residents who have come to us and then how they have matriculated into having their own classrooms and working in our school division. So again, we reviewed this on November 3rd, and now we're bringing it back for either more discussion or possible approval.
Any questions? Your recommendation?
Our recommendation is that we move forward on the approval of the MOU with Mathematica Research Body for the study of teacher residency programs and their graduates.
Okay, heard the superintendent's recommendation. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Nguyen, second by Mr. Pierce. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. Move to number 7, our information items. Remember, on Monday, December the 6th at 6:00 p.m., we will have a meeting here, joint meeting with City Council here in the cafeteria. At 6:00 p.m., we will be going, after we do the roll call, we'll be going directly into a closed session with City Council. So we'll be moving to the library. And there is on December the 7th, the disciplinary committee, myself, Mr. Pierce, and Ms. Long, we will be meeting with Dr. Johnson, Dr. Rogers, and Mr. Chavis to review the suspension policy before bringing it to the entire board for a vote. We'll be looking over the entire policy. So we'll be meeting with them. And our next regular board meeting is December the 15th. Do we have any committee reports? Any updates? Okay. Any new business from board members?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Pierce.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if it's the will of the board, the middle college program, and the reason why I'm asking, there had been some concerns about the program. So I wanted to see if it's possible, I know it's possible, that we can get a full update on the middle college program, students, status, students' climate, and I'm talking about their concerns, grades, on-track status, academic warning status, who's monitoring during the week, who's gauging during the week, and who that individual reports to. I also wanted to find out, and I'm not asking simply for myself, I'm asking because there are some constituency concerns. That is this a gifted, and I'm asking for a constituent, does this fall under the gifted classification? And but you don't have to answer now. Just, you know, they wanted to get we wanted to see where that is. And those, I'm just throwing out some of the questions that were put to me. So I wanted to make sure that I wrote it down as they were asking. At some point, I just said, hold on a second, let me get it down so I can make sure that I have, you know, their concerns. So I don't know, January, middle of January, somewhere around that window, if we can get a full update where those kids are, you know, who's doing, got the measuring stick, but that, you know, that whole 9 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Full report.
Thank you. Ms. Long.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right. I don't know if I missed my turn for this, but I wanted to bring up some issues that, or some statements that were said by the parents, and these are all different issues. I just wanna, this is a personal one for me, the side effects of COVID. If a child had COVID, I realized that a side effects of having COVID is brain fog. I talked to the nurse about it here, and she said with her going through it and coming back, she still had the same thing a year after. So we talking about education and academics, and you know, it might affect grades and all that kind of stuff because you know that's a real side effect, and I'm realizing it personally. Okay, this is a different subject. The negative stigma of Blandford as alternative education. Like the average person in the community don't realize that alternative education could be the gifted program, could it be just learning in a different environment. When we say alternative, it seems like somebody's getting put out of school, so they have to go over there. So if we can either use different wording or promote the fact that it's just alternative education not being negative, but just being different than, is another issue. And another one was one of my babies, the children in the school was upset because he said, when you take the COVID test, and this is something that really nobody can change, but it is a concern. When you take the COVID test, you have 2 days before you get the results back. So if the children get their COVID tests on Wednesday or you know, or Monday, Thursday, Friday, they go into school, then I mean, 2 days after that, then they found out that they have COVID. You see what I'm saying? So they've been in school
Yeah.
for 2 days. And
Yeah.
so one of my babies was upset because they was like, the other child had to go home for COVID, but he had been around them. Why didn't anybody alert them that that person had COVID and everybody that was around him, because he was upset about it. So anyway, him bringing it to my attention that even though you get tested and you're getting tested, you still have 2 days before you find out whether you test positive when you're in the classroom with other children. It's nothing we can do, but yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to respond here?
You want to, you don't, did you
Yeah,
want to respond?
it's nothing to fix. I don't feel like there's anything to fix. I just realize it's like a concern. It is, like I told him, it ain't much you can do. It ain't much anybody can do about that.
Okay. Mr. Lundy? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
I want to make a comment. Maybe Mr. Pierce can add this to what he was speaking of. I still feel like if we would create what's needed for parents and other people in the community to read, it would be a better understanding of these programs that we have. Because we are not, I think that we can do better in how we're selling our programs. And I think our parents may understand it better if we just take some time, create a trifold, not one on a low level, ones that really look good, that are presentable, that have the meat in them that our parents can understand and that our kids can understand, and use that to help with some of the explanation that you mentioned that is not clear, because we don't sell those programs. And I'm sure if we did, we would be preparing kids on lower levels. Parents would be preparing them. Parents would strengthen their summer programs for their kids, knowing that they're going to matriculate into something higher and better.
Thank you, Mr. Lundy. Well, I just want to share with the board on last night, I did attend Walnut Hills PTA. They had their meeting and I became a member. Mr. Miles, I paid my $5. I'm official member of Walnut Hill PTA, and they're doing some great things over there. The principal shared that they've already started the safety patrol with the 4th and 5th graders. He's getting ready to start a chess club. There's some other activities that the PTA, the parents, I mean, they were awesome. They had all their activities lined up. They had feedback from the parents on what they wanted to do. I mean, it was great to see the parents there and running the PTA like they're supposed to, and having other parents involved and asking them questions. I mean, it was just great to see that. It just brought back memories to me. But I'm a member. Now I'm just waiting on Vernon. I'm waiting on Vernon Johns at
That's right.
Petersburg High School.
I'm a member of Vernon Johns.
And if I could jump
Yes.
in here, we'll be sending out to all of you the list of every single PTA president once we finalize that list. And then when their meeting dates are, and you all can join all of them, hopefully,
Yeah.
if you would choose to do that.
The reason why Chairman Pritchett called out my name, because I suggested that all of us should join at least one of the PTA.
Mhm.
So we would be present, show a presence. So select a school, get involved, try to make the meeting.
Mhm.
I'm at Vernon Johns, so you can't select Vernon.
I certainly want to join my neighborhood school,
Okay.
but I don't want to have an escort with me to go through the building because I don't need one. Not from anybody. So if we can get that straight, then I can participate.
Okay. So we do have, who is it? We have Miss Long with you don't have a school in your ward. Miss Wynn doesn't have a school in your ward. So you have, who is it? Petersburg High is coming up, and
That's right.
and I think London has two also. He can share.
Oh yeah, I
London can
got
share.
AP and
in Westview. So you can
You
get
can
with Mr.
share.
London, get with Mr. London and find out which one you want. Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. That's
Mhm.
great.
Yeah. But I love it. I mean, I plan to join them. I join them all. I mean, because I love it, especially on the elementary level. I love the Christmas plays. I look forward to
I
the
do
Christmas
too.
production.
I do too. Oh,
It get me in the spirit for Christmas.
it does.
That's right. That's right. It is. It does.
They do the doors and all of the things that get you lift
Right.
up your spirits.
Right. Okay. You got it straight.
Yeah. Can you hear?
I'll do the high school.
Okay.
Oh,
That way
fantastic.
where I can possibly help with a college transition.
Okay.
That's
Amen.
great.
Wonderful. All right. If there any more, and there's no more announcements, is there a motion to adjourn?
There it
I
is.
so moved.
Moved by Ms. Law. She
Second.
got you. Second, Mr. Miles, all in favor?
Bye.
Opposed, motion carried. This meeting
No,
is now
Miss Long
adjourned.
was gonna get that.
Good night.